Hello and welcome back to the Wine Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Danitz, and today I am joined by Ed Feuchuk. Ed is a marketer and self-proclaimed mistake maker with nearly 20 years of experience building innovative DTC wine brands. As the general manager for Farm Collective Napa Valley, Ed has led creative, strategic, and technical initiatives for brands like Tank Garage Winery, James Cole Winery, Rigucci Winery, and T-Vine Winery. With a passion for authentic experiences and renegade marketing, Ed and his work have been featured in such publications as the San Francisco Chronicle, the New York Times, Wine Spectator, and Playboy. Hi, Ed.
Hey, I can't believe I had to listen to you read that. But you did a great job. But I'm
Thank
like,
you.
oh
Yeah.
gosh, oh
I know
gosh, oh gosh.
always a wild thing to have your bio that you carefully crafted read by somebody else. You're like, oh man.
Yeah, I don't know about carefully crafted. I think we made that. I made that like 6 or 7 years ago because one of these conferences that I was like speaking on a panel for asked me for my bio, and I was like, I don't have a bio. And then like I sent that to him, and it's like it's like 5 sentences long. And then I go on their website and I'd see other people's bios, and they're like 5 paragraphs long.
Yeah.
And they're like, and then after studying abroad in France, and they they got their PhD in wine marketing from some sophisticated place in France. And I'm like, I've done stuff that's been focused in Playboy magazine.
I just showed up one day and this is how I am.
That's not too far from the truth, to be honest with you. But I showed up at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the crux of the wine industry for most people, or like, I don't know, most people that I know. It's like you sort of just fall into it. It's like the wine industry chooses you, not the other way around. And then you end up being in this really amazing place and doing all these amazing things. And then you're just like, wow, I was in Playboy. Like my work was in Playboy. Like, I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've had a lot of weird, surreal moments on that. One time, this is a kind of a after the fact bucket list thing where I got my name on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle print edition, which I never had in the cards for me. And it had the most hilarious quote along like 5 or 6 years ago. We did this crystal fermented wine for Tank called Crystal Visions, where we fermented wine with like quartz crystals that we charged, and we went through the whole process. They interviewed me from the Chronicle about this. I was telling them the story about how we had this friend named Jason Rupert who sort of pioneered the process. And I said, to me, it sounded like the most Northern California thing I've ever heard of. And that's what they put on the front. And it just said, this is the most Northern California thing I've ever heard of. And it's like Ed Feuchuk. And then I had people reaching out to me. They're like, you were on the front page of the Chronicle. And I was like, really, for what? And they're like, talking about crystal wines. I was like, ah, okay. But to your point, the wine industry is very interesting because it's very broad and there's a bunch of different things you can do in it. Like, I know you have a viticultural degree, and then you got into like vineyard management, and then someone's like, hey, you should document this. And then smash cut to like, now you are taking like amazing photographs and you're offering like strategic advice and helping people, build their brand strategies and building their identities. So you sort of get enveloped into it, and then you either grow into different spots or you find spots that best fit your interests and your talents. So that's been a lot of our stories.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a cool thing to do. And I talked to Jason Haas about this in this last conversation on this episode or this podcast about how, like, as somebody with ADHD, I find that the wine industry is like the perfect place to be because I feel like I'm never bored. Like, there's always something different to do, something new to learn. And you can sort of like choose your own adventure. And then, as you mentioned, it's like you kind of just like end up finding a thing. You end up like slipping into your own little like niche that you never knew was possible, or you couldn't even have imagined for yourself. It's just like such a cool industry to be in.
Can I ask you a question? Because
Yes.
your photos at this point are both like very interesting from like an artistic standpoint, but also like very technically sound. And I always think that's like the best like synergy of photography. When you first got kind of pulled into that role, did you have that foundation, or were you like, I guess I got to make photos, and if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the best way it can be done, or I'm going to do it in a way that hasn't been done in this industry before?
Yeah, I mean, I had a small bit of a background in photography before before I started studying wine and viticulture. I wanted to be a photojournalist. And so I did a couple of technical like beginner photography courses at a community college in Pasadena. And then before that, I had, my senior paper in high school was, I'm trying to remember the exact title, but it was basically like how photography influences society and like public opinion. And so I had already had access to cameras and things like that. And so I knew how to use a camera, and I knew sort of like the technical stuff behind it of like light and composition and things like that. But really, like when I started doing this for wine, it was really a matter of like taking my camera out and like photographing everything and photographing every single day and photographing all of my friends and just anybody who would put up with me. I would photograph them, and then it just kind of started blossoming a little bit more into more of the like artistic kind of like creative side. And then also just like watching some of my peers do this. There's I don't know where he is these days, but Adam Decker is a really amazing photographer who is up in your
Yeah.
neck of the woods. Yeah. And he was really instrumental with me, like learning wine photography specifically. And it was his advice. He was like, go buy like George Rose's like photography books of like wine. And he's like, just like look at the photos and then see if you can recreate them in your own way. And that's sort of how I taught myself to, see, I guess. And yeah, and so it was just, that's kind of the long and short of it.
Okay. Well, I think that's interesting knowing this now because um, you had sort of a photojournalist background, and that's kind of about capturing things that are really happening in an authentic way, but an interesting way. And I think for the longest time, wine photography was about capturing things in like the most glamorous way and painting this like
Yeah.
very unrealistic idea. So it's like, it's the guy walking through the vineyard with the vest on, sifting dirt at sunset, where
Yeah.
perfect sun, perfect lighting. And there's the beautiful tablescapes that are, lit like they're in a studio. And I'm guessing at some point you're like, there's not enough people bringing this photorealism to it and capturing things like on a day-to-day basis when things are imperfect and maybe it is overcast and maybe it is broad daylight and maybe I'm not going to have people pose for things or I'm not going to have lights, and just sort of letting it in a very like technically sound way, letting it tell a story like authentically, which is what I think is really cool about the stuff you do.
Well, thank you. I found that I'm not very good at the like editorial side. Like I feel like I'm not very good at directing people, and I feel like I'm not very good at styling. So like whenever I have clients who want those more like, kind of staged
Yeah.
lifestyle photos and studio photos, which are necessary, I just find that that's just not my sweet spot. So I end up like hiring somebody to come in and be like a creative director, or like hopefully the client themselves, they have like a clear vision of what they want, and then I can sort of like mix my like technical knowledge of photography in with that. But I find that I just, like I've worked in cellars, I've worked in vineyards and all the things, and so I know what it's supposed to look like and what it's not supposed to look like. And one of the biggest frustrations that I had with a lot of my winery clients, particularly winemakers who just like don't generally like to be on camera. They were like, like last time we hired a photographer and they were having me do things that were just completely out of character for me. And I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to make you do that. Like I might have you
Yeah.
pause and I might like make a couple of suggestions like, hey, like, okay, like, what are you doing today? Oh, you're like pulling samples for barrels. Okay, like, let's use the glass thief instead of the like plastic thief. So it looks a little nicer.
Yeah.
Like, let's use a glass, like one of our nicer glasses instead of, but even then sometimes I'm like, what do you typically use to pull these samples? And they're like, red Solo cups. I'm like, cool. Like, let's do that because that's authentic for you. And that
Yeah.
makes sense,
Like a
So
stained red Solo cup.
yeah, exactly. Or it's like, yeah, or like I had one client who they have anytime that like a stem will break off a glass in the tasting room, they'll bring that into the, in the cellar, and then they use those as like just to like pull samples from. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then because they're not like really putting them down, they're just pulling samples and tasting them and then dumping them. And so it's just like, well, we might as well just use glassware that we already have and not, so it's pretty funny. So somehow you've managed to start interviewing me, and that's not what this is about. Ed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you kind of mentioned that you you sort of like this sort of behind the scenes views of wineries versus like kind of these like highly stylized imagery. And I want to talk a little bit more about that because I first encountered Tank Garage Winery and you because of TikTok. I think that you guys are one of the only wineries that, to my knowledge, is doing short form video really, really well. And it started out as this really like, I find like off the cuff, like, behind the scenes and all that. And you're still doing the behind the scenes stuff, but then you're like the video quality has just is complete, like it's so high quality now. Can you talk a little bit about that and like how that came to be? I would love to know just, yeah, like how TikTok became part of your strategy, but also like how you sort of evolved that strategy over time.
Sure. So I guess, I mean, it starts here, which is like, if you're unfamiliar with Tank is a garage winery, but from the onset, it was really just sort of a foundation for us to explore things we think are cool. So sometimes that's from a like viticultural or winemaking perspective. Sometimes that's from just like a design or marketing perspective. Sometimes it's from like an artistic perspective. So we get to do a lot of things, and we're small, we're family owned. I think it's our biggest strength being nimble, and we are able to just sort of like, if we think something's cool, we're able to just execute on it really quickly. Like, it doesn't have to go through these layers of like middle management and approval process, and everyone gets their input into it and it gets watered down. So when it comes to TikTok, it starts the way, I think a lot of people got into TikTok is, it's the pandemic. This was before Instagram had, released Reels to us. I think Vine had died, or it had, was dying on the Vine. And I got hooked into TikTok. I was like, this is amazing. It's all algorithmically fed stuff. It's short form content. It is authentic. People are just making stuff. And we're like, let's see if we can do something. And so we just started doing things, and like, I don't even think putting that much effort into it. We luckily had some really amazing people on our team at that time that understood TikTok, that used TikTok. And then we had some amazing people in the cellar that were very charismatic and cool and had some good ideas. And so we started doing it around harvest, and we started posting harvest content. And one of the things that we do, or we do a lot of, is we foot stomp. And I think, to a lot of people that are unfamiliar with winemaking or the historical aspect of winemaking, they see people like mashing large amounts of fruit with their feet, they're going to stop scrolling. And we sort of blew up that way. And so we had a bunch of great videos about foot stomping, about winemaking during harvest. Some of them had like, 3 million views and more comments than we could even read. And we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so we kept doing that. And then that sort of led its way into, once Instagram was like, we need to steal yet another idea from a competing platform, we're going to start doing these reels. We started doing that on Instagram, where we already had sort of a baked in audience. And, if you remember, Instagram started out sort of, you manually curated the list of people you followed. So there's probably a greater expectation that you're familiar with the brands that you follow. It's not all algorithmically fed. Now it's more of a hybrid, but very algorithmically driven. So we started posting video content there. And, I do think we like to pride ourselves in making interesting content and compelling content and things that provide value. And just in terms of our like video strategy, I'd be lying to you if you said that, we've always been great at it, or that we're currently great at it, or even if I can talk about our TikTok strategy in a second here, even if we really know what we're doing. But over time, we were one of the first people posting video content for wineries and authentic video content for wineries. And it took 4 years or so for everyone else to be like, oh, we can just shoot things with their iPhones too. And then they start producing similar content. And then all of a sudden there's lots of content on the market.
Right.
And so the thing we've been focused on lately is how can we step our game up and make things even more compelling? How can we tell better stories? How can we make things more visually interesting? Because that's sort of, nobody's doing that yet in the wine industry. I mean, like, some people are, but not enough people are doing it. And I think we have enough people on our team that are just like fans of cinema and have crazy ideas, and we have crazy wines coming out that we think we can do interesting things for. So it's just a matter of sort of everybody getting together and sort of coming up with ideas and egging each other on to like, let's pursue that. And that seems to be working for us. Now, as it comes to like TikTok, we've sort of tapered away from like, hey, let's just pull out a camera and, shoot some wacky stuff during harvest, because as cool as those were, I think a lot of the attention we got was sort of, hey, this is novel. This is somebody
Mhm.
walking in grapes, and it's a 14-year-old kid from Slovenia who's like, this is gross. And, we're trying to explain to him the process and how, alcohol makes it more sterile. And, it's some of those things you just step back and say, is this serving our brand? Is this authentic to what we are? Telling a story about our brand, or is it just sort of making these one-off videos that are, I don't say gimmicky, but they're sort of educational, novel, but they don't sort of build a long-term story or conversation or anything like that. So as it comes to TikTok now, we're trying to figure out, should we be on that platform? If we are, what kind of content do we need to produce? Is it the same content that we are, releasing on our website or Instagram, or is it something differently? If it's different, what does that have to look like? So I think our main thing though is that we want to be authentic to our brand, even if it doesn't get as much views, and we want to do cool
Mhm.
shit. And if we can do cool shit and it's compelling and people have a reason to watch it, and then we can kind of Trojan horse in cool information about wine, information about our brand, help them, become more aware or value our products more, then I think long term that will be successful. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It totally does. Yeah, and it led into also kind of answered one of my follow-up questions, which is like, do you think that it's still a viable channel, TikTok? Because it's hard to say. I know. It's like
Yeah. I guess, I mean, it depends on what your definition of viable is. Like I've talked to my friends at corporate wineries, and they treat social media like it's email marketing, right? Where they're trying to immediately leverage sales on it, which is not how we view it as a tool. And when we've tried to like use it as a tool to get, returns on clicks and get people to purchase, it doesn't work that way, right? And our favorite brands don't do things that way. They tell stories, they build relationships with the brand, they make their stuff look cool. And then when it's time to release something, there's a sort of there's a built up desire for that product. And then the consumers just do what they naturally do. So in terms of like TikTok, I'm like, I don't know if it's a good platform if your expectation is direct conversion, right? Which is we post something and we're like, hey, we're having this, you know, Thanksgiving Magnum special. Click this link to buy for 15% off. Like in our experience, that hasn't worked so well. I don't think that's compelling content. I don't think that's what people go for TikTok for. I don't go to TikTok to do that for, non-wine brands that I follow. But in terms of telling stories, I'm like, it's a great platform for telling stories if that is your goal. So I think there are probably some wineries that are doing a good job there, and then some wineries that dip their toe in the water and they're like, we're not getting conversions. And by that, I mean like purchases or,
Mhm.
memberships, and then they just bailed on it. And our thing is taking the step back is not, hey, we're seeking more conversions. It's we want to adapt to this platform and tell stories within it the best way we possibly can. So I think it's
Yeah.
viable for storytelling, for building brand awareness, is for connecting with people, but not for like, hey, we're going to get direct sales on this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great point, is like to kind of understand if we're asking if it's a viable platform, if anything's viable marketing, you have to sort of manage your expectations and understand like what it is you're trying to get out of it. So like if you're saying, like you said, if it's direct sales that you're after, then TikTok maybe isn't the place to be. But like another place might be. Maybe Instagram is, or maybe just like moving people to your email list. That's the best way to get
Yeah.
conversions.
Well, you're a good person to ask because you work with a variety of brands, and I'm in my silo. When you are talking to brands or they ask you, like, what do you think about TikTok? What has been your advice to them, or what is your current advice for them?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, as what you were saying. Is I asked them, like, "Well, what are your goals?" Like, "Okay, well, we want more people, like, we need more brand awareness." I'm like, "Then yes, TikTok's a really great place to be." And they're like, or if they're like, "Oh, we want more, sales." Then I'm like, "Okay, then, like, let's explore, like, paid ads," because that's
Advertising, yeah.
really yeah, I'm like, because I think that's, like, if you're using, like, I always say that, like, I think you need to have like a strong organic social media presence before you
Yeah.
start throwing money at a problem. And I usually recommend, like, I think that Instagram, I think, is probably the best like baseline for, I think every winery needs to be on Instagram. And it's getting challenging. The Instagram's doing things that are frustrating, but they still maintain that it's one of the best platforms to be for pretty much everybody, because there's just so much that you can do there. It's such a great place for if you're trying to do brand awareness, you have the reels, but if you're trying to do more direct sales, then you can like do stories and DMs and things like that. When people ask me about TikTok specifically, one of the things that I mention, a story that I like to tell is recently one of my clients is going through a like a website overhaul because of the Wine Direct acquisition by C7. So they're like, this is a great time for us to look at our website and change things, fix things. And so they're going through that whole process. And one of the things that the web design company asked us was like, well, where are you getting the most of your leads? Like when people come to your tasting room, do you know where they're coming from, how they heard about you? And so we were talking to some of the like tasting room hosts, and they were like, an overwhelming amount of people say that they come from TikTok. And I was like, we don't even have a TikTok, so that's wild.
Yeah.
And so then I went on, we have Instagram, we have Threads, we have Facebook. And so I went on TikTok and was just like, well, let me just like search for this, for Brave and Maiden. And I started searching for them and I was like, oh my God, there's like 50 videos of people from like all the way back in 2020, 2019 of people who had visited us and like all this stuff. And there's like hundreds of thousands of comments. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And so I'm like, of course they're hearing about it. They're hearing about us. Like we didn't even have to put any effort in. And so I was like, well, I think we need to be here. Like, I think we need to be a part of these conversations. And so I created an account for them, and I spent like the first like 2 weeks, I basically just spent like going back through all of those videos that we'd been mentioned in and like responding to comments. Cause
Yeah.
even if they were like, 5 years old, if they're from 2020, I was still responding to them. I was like, hey, yeah, like here's how our, tours and tastings work now. And like, all these things. And it was really cool because then that brought a whole influx of followers in, because those people who was responding to comments from, they were seeing that they're like, oh my gosh, you have an account, and like they're really excited. And so now we're starting to get more traction over there. It's slow growing, but like faster growing than other social media platforms. And I always like every month my clients and I joke, we're like, well, it's really annoying that like the bare minimum effort on TikTok is working better than like the high effort we're doing on Instagram. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess you gotta fish where the fish are fishing, right? And
Yeah,
the other,
exactly.
the other cool thing about that is there are a lot of like emerging niche opportunities. Like I've seen a lot of businesses, but a lot of wineries have success on LinkedIn. I've seen people
Yeah.
dabble in Pinterest. There's an emerging sort of, more wineries are getting involved with like Reddit, and that's another one where if it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you've never like
Yeah.
put your winery, Tank Garage Winery in quotes and then typed in Reddit and Googled it, like you can see all these comments that people have been talking about it. It's people that are planning trips to Napa Valley or Paso Robles. It's people that are in wine collecting communities. And they're having these like conversations. One, a lot of people will get informed by Reddit. It's an authority. And then two, a lot of these like AI tools are sort of ingesting Reddit content to sort of inform their viewpoint. So when people are using more agentic, search to find out where they should go on their trip, it's like those things are being impactful. So it's cool to like look at stuff when you didn't realize, there's a conversation about you, and hopefully it's good. But
Yeah.
that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It's so funny. I feel like this client that Brave and Maiden, who's on TikTok now, they also mentioned Reddit in a completely separate conversation, but it was like the first I had heard of using Reddit. My client came to me and they're like, what do you think about Reddit? And I was like, well, like, I don't know, like I use it when I'm looking for stuff about life, but I don't know if like I've never like thought about it as like a marketing tool. And so I'd be really curious to see how, beyond the just searching your winery name in quotes and then Reddit, like how wineries are using, like, is Tank using it as like a marketing tool, like, and how?
Yeah, not really. Like every once in a while, I'll hop on there and respond to people. I try not to be combative, but if somebody says things like, a common misperception is like Tank Garage Winery is a wine bar and they serve a bunch of other people's wines. It's like, no, actually, we have a winemaking facility. We source all the grapes. We make it ourselves. Like just making sure that's out there. But I do think it's something that deserves a lot of attention. And I think just marketing in general, even outside of wine, it's becoming more niche. And
Hmm.
it's about finding niche communities and where people are. And there are places like Reddit and there are places like Discord where these more niche conversations are happening. And so it's going to require us to go a little bit deeper, which I think is actually pretty exciting. Just as a quick plug, we are the Direct to Consumer Wine Symposium, which is in January of this year, has a session with Tyler from the Rebel School of Wine that's going to kind of dive into this. But as you've been talking here, I did Brave and Maiden Wine Reddit, and there's awesome stuff in here. No joke. There's lots of stuff talking about you know I've been in Santa Barbara County wine for 30 years, and this is my favorite place, and it's stunning and good wines. And, a lot of people are talking about this inside of recommendations on where to go in the, r/Santa Barbara subreddit and the r/wine subreddit. Imagine if you're a winery that's in there having a conversation with these people and you're like immersed with them, and these are the people that are, influencing all the lurkers that are going to Reddit for advice on what kind of wines or places they should visit. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for looking for that. Because yeah, I'm definitely gonna add that to my list of things to do. But I'm
Yeah.
really excited. I'm glad you mentioned that seminar that workshop that'll be happening with Tyler, because I really want to go to that one. I have to look at the schedule again because I feel like I might be on a panel that's like conflicting times with that one, but I hope not. I need to look at the schedule. I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the one that I want to be at. I feel like it's so hard with DTC because there's so many great workshops happening, and they're all happening at the same time, and I'm like, which one do I choose? So I'm gonna have to gather all my friends and sort of make them all take notes and all the different
Yeah.
discussions. So that's awesome. Well, I like that you mentioned that you kind of, one of the common misconceptions with Tank is that you have that you're pouring other people's wine and whatever. And I think I'm wondering if that's coming from the fact that you never make the same wine twice. Can you talk a little bit about like that and like that decision, that strategy, that philosophy, and how that came to be, and if you
Yeah.
ever have pushback from that?
It's the stupidest decision we've ever made, but the best decision we've ever made. But yeah, no, it's the best part of working at Tank, but it's also the most challenging part of working at Tank because you are, for two reasons. One, from like a marketing perspective, it's like, I have friends that work at wineries that like they launch a new wine like every 5 years, or even the big corporate wines. And it's like, we do this 25 times a year. Like the people that work here and leave here come like really well experienced and skilled at like building up sort of hype cycles and putting content together and releasing things. And that's a lot of work because you got to come up with new wine blends every year. You got to come up with new labels. You got to get new TTB approvals. You have to flesh out, you have to build all this photos, videos, internal training videos, website stuff. You have to educate the consumer again and again and again. And then the other challenge is that, on one hand, there's a lot of benefits to having always changing wines. But on the other hand, like sometimes consumers want, continuity and they want to just go to the same thing over and over again. So our challenge there is to make sure we're always making cool and interesting new wines and telling cool and interesting new stories. And then also, especially for like our memberships, like making sure that we have continuity and lineage to previous releases. So it's like, if you like the rose last year, that one's gone. We have a new one called Pink's Not Dead. It's very similar. Here's the sort of new wrinkles to it. Here's the new story behind it. Here's the new kind of like punk rock vibe we're going with. So that's a constant challenge. But I mean, I've been in here since the beginning of this, and we've done almost 300 different wines. So I'm just in that rhythm, right? Which is, this is a big time for us. This is OND, October, November, December. It's a big wine sales
Mhm.
month. We're doing like our big drops this month. So we did this cool fiasco wine project where we got these Italian fiasco bottles that have the wicker bottoms on them, and we hand labeled them. We hand bottled them. And we did this big hype, and we dropped these and they sold out really quickly. And then we went right on to this other wine that we did, which is a 2025 carbonic macerated Gamay Noir called Carbonic Youth. And we had this whole other concept and made all these cool videos for that, sold out. And then now we have a cool idea that we're going to do something pretty extreme for Black Friday. And we're behind on that. So we're going to go with that. And then when that happens, we have a cool idea for Cyber Monday. And then when that's done, we got to move on to like, we have this, we have wine clubs and stuff. So once you get in the rhythm of being creative and just going, it's fun, but there's lots of challenges to it. But I
Yeah.
also think there's lots of benefits to it. And I'd say this, like, it wasn't something where like we focus grouped or like we did a SWOT analysis for, where like we think there's a market opportunity for it. It goes back to what I told you earlier, which is we want to explore things. If we make them all one-offs, we can continue to explore different things. And so that's what we did. If you're the type of consumer we tend to attract, are people that are like, I want to come in and I want you guys to take me on a little bit of journey. And every time I come to your tasting room in Calistoga or Paso Robles, you'll have new wines and new stories to tell me. And every time I open up my wine, club shipment, you'll have cool new stuff to share with me. And that way it doesn't get stagnant and stale. And then sometimes we have people that just want the same thing over and over again. So we'll try to provide sort of expectations to here's what it tastes like for previous wines, but sometimes it's not for them. But I think initially when we started doing it, like wine consumers had a hard time wrapping their heads around, like, what do you mean you're not going to make a successive vintage to this wine? I'm not going to come back in here in, next year and get a 2024 middle finger red wine. You mean it's going to be gone? And I think now consumers they're more comfortable, or they've seen more like limited edition drops and they've seen it in streetwear where they grasp the concept a lot better. But it's the interesting thing about Tank, and I don't think a lot of wineries do it. And I don't think a lot of wineries should do it. But for us, it's been one of the coolest things about us because we get to tell all these different stories. We get to play in all these different mediums. And I love doing it. And then the people on our team love doing it.
Yeah. I think it's really cool. And I think it's exactly what the wine industry needs is sort of a divergence from the traditional way of doing things where you do have that continuity year after year after year. And I feel like I'm like the target demographic for Tank Garage because like I don't want to join a wine club where I know I'm going to get the same thing every single year. Like if I wanted to get the same thing every year, I would just buy it, like I don't feel the need to be in a club for that. But like the one wine club that I'm in is from my local wine bar and it's because they, like I get 3 shipments a year, 4 bottles and it's all like hand curated from like different wineries. I'm trying different, from different wines from different countries. Like I got like a Syrah from like Israel and it was just stuff that I wouldn't have thought to buy myself or like maybe I would, but I just like maybe I like sometimes like when I'm going out shopping, I'll play it a little bit safe. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like I'm like, oh, well, I know I like this, but the wine club allows me to be a little bit more adventurous and all that. And so I'm really curious if you like you said that you don't do like a SWOT analysis about it, but like what do you like have like a target demographic in mind, like a target person that is just like, or is it just kind of like, if you'll buy our wine, please buy our wine?
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, it's not that. And I think I'll say this. I've seen brands try to sort of replicate what we've done in a very like contrived manner. And they think it's like this blueprint, which is like, it used to be, we're going to target millennials or we're going to target Gen Z and they like these sort of colors. And then you get these websites with a bunch of like corporate Memphis on them and they feel soulless. Tank from the get go was started by James Harder, who had this cool idea and he just wanted to do cool stuff. And I think the reality is people trust our taste and they trust us to provide cool things for them. And not that we're resistant to feedback. If wines don't hit the mark or we do something that people don't like, we'll take that into mind. But our thing is this sort of, we're going to explore things we think are cool and curious. And we're not like looking at market segments and trying to identify things, or somebody says, this thing is trending right now, you should do it. In fact, we do. If this thing's trending right now, we're not going to do it because we want to be the trendsetters. And if we're copying people, then by definition, we're not the trendsetters, we're followers. So our thing is this, we just think about what do we think would be cool to do? What makes us excited to do? What do you think we could, especially when like that Fiasco wine bottle, it was called Tre Cose Belle, which is 3 beautiful things. And we're like, it's pasta, sex, and vino. What can we do with that? And we just got going creatively and we put it out there and people liked it. So I think the best things and I hate to say this, it's going to sound douchey, but like the best art comes from people making art for their own purposes. Like they're expressing themselves. And that is what we do. We think something's cool. This is a cool idea. We think it fits into like thematically what we do at Tank, and we just do it. And we'll see how it goes. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't hit, and we'll move on. Like we're working on this project now where we're doing a Pasamento white wine. And if you go on like our Instagram, there's like photos of it. And, Emma Kay came out and took these cool photos of us. But we did this process, old world process, where we take grape clusters or people take grape clusters and they dry them out before pressing and fermenting them, concentrate the flavors. And it's traditionally done on red wines. And we just started talking. It was like, oh, no one ever does this on white grapes. I wonder what would happen. And we're like,
Mhm.
let's find out. So we spent all this time getting these grapes, and our assistant winemaker Eric spent all this time building these hooks, and we hung them in our cellar, and we're going to release it. But I'm like, if we went to a focus group or we surveyed our members, they're not going to be like, hey, what should we do next? They wouldn't universally be like, you guys got to do a Pasamento white wine. Like that's not on anyone's radar. And this may
Yeah.
very well bomb and it may not be successful, but I think people look to us to like do cool things I didn't even think about doing. And so that's what
Yeah.
sort of inspires and drives us.
Yeah. I like that philosophy too of like, let's just see what happens. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's such a great way of running things. Again,
Well,
I feel like I'm going back to this, but like, especially in the wine industry where everything is so like formulated and it's just
yeah.
really,
Well, Heather, think about this. So you've sat in meetings with marketing people and they're like, here's the blueprint to posting on Instagram. Here's best practices for doing things. I'm like, these things became best practices because somebody experimented with them and then adapted and experimented more and discovered, hey, this works out really well in these circumstances, right? And so if you are truly a good marketer, you are the one that's discovering what those things are. You're not the one that's sort of like, I've read this case study or I studied under this person. I'm just going to basically copycat what they're doing. And if you are, like that's great for you, but you're not innovating. So I think for us, we take a lot of pride in innovating and trying things new and experimenting and failing because that's how we forge forward and that's how we be sort of trendsetters. And again, we don't always hit the mark. I'm not saying we're, changing people's lives, but I'm like, when it comes to marketing, you got to kind of take a risk and you got to do things differently and you got to let things fail. Because if you don't, you're just going to end up doing what everyone else does. And I always say this, marketing is not about fitting in, it's about standing out. So it takes doing something different. And sometimes you gotta fuck around a little bit.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Can't say better than that. But what's the process of like ideating these different wines? I mean, is that like a team process or is there like one person who kind of leads the charge on that?
If there was someone who leads the charge, it would be James, the owner. Sort of like he's our lead singer. He writes the songs for the most part, but I think inspiration comes from a variety of places. And like with our wine, sometimes it starts with the wine itself. Like I always tell this story because it's a funny story. Is we'd been doing these orange wines, so like skin contact white wines, where we make them like we take white grapes and we make them like a red wine. We set them on the skins, they extract color, blah blah blah. So we had all these skin contact white wines, and we're like, okay, we got to make a new one. What are we going to call it? And we're like, somebody on our team, might have been me, was like Skin Flick, like a porno movie. And we're like,
Yeah.
yes, 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 100%. And we're like, immediately you know what it's going to be like. So this leads me to like trying to find a vintage porno movie, doing research, and then trying to find who has the rights to this because I don't want to steal it and get sued. And, talking to this old guy named Dick Lane who has his own 800 number, and I'm licensing this movie and we're putting it on our wine. So sometimes it starts like that. And then other times it starts like, maybe like top down, like we have a cool concept for a wine or we do like these, we have like charitable initiatives and we're like, hey, we want to work with this organization. What if we made a wine that was like this? So it really just depends. It just comes from people making ideas they're coming up with ideas either from a storytelling standpoint, a artistic standpoint, winemaking standpoint that we think are cool and interesting, and then figuring out how far we can run with them. So
Mhm.
every wine is different, but if I said someone was leading the charge, it'd be James, who founded and owns the company. He he sort of drives us forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I could just talk about that all day because it's just so interesting to me. It's like I haven't really found anybody else who's doing something like this. I mean, like I think the closest I can think of is Maker Wine, but I feel like they can other people's wine, and so they have a different wine, um, you know, all the time. But I'm
Yeah.
like, but that's also like that's a collaboration. It's not a single winery who's doing like everything from like, tip to tail. Like it's really impressive. It's very cool.
Thanks.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about the Paso tasting room launch because
Sure.
that, of course, like I haven't had a chance to get up there. I'm pregnant, so I can't go wine tasting, which is really upsetting. But yeah, what made you choose Paso as the next location for
It's
your
a
tasting
great
room?
question. Well, first of all, I'm here right now. I don't know if you can see it. I'm in our back room. I had Peter, our creative guy. I was like, right before we got on this, I was like, can you light? Because we're gonna shoot some stuff right after this. I was like, can you
Nice.
light me? He's like, how long do I have? I'm like, you have 3 minutes. So he came up with this.
It looks great.
Thank you. So the cool thing about Tank again is that I think, yes, it's a place for us to explore things we like, but the things we're really passionate about are like wine, and California. And so from like just a like identity perspective, it's about exploring California. It's a love letter to California. Like aesthetically, if you go in our tasting rooms, it's vintage, it's nostalgic, it's, skate culture and surf culture and vintage automotive motor culture. More in a more abstract way, it's, our motto is to never dream alone. And a lot of people sort of go to California to pursue their dreams. You can be yourself. You can do anything in California. It's the land of opportunity. It's the great Western frontier. And I think that's sort of an inspiring message. And then from a winemaking perspective, like this state has incredible viticultural and winemaking history, like unrivaled, perhaps in the world, from the top of the state all the way down. And so from the onset, we first started out making Napa Valley wines because we're a Napa Valley based winery and that's what we knew, but we wanted to explore more, and we started making wines from all over California, from Mendocino, from the Sierra foothills, from San Benito County, from San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles. And we really love coming down to Paso Robles. Like it's just fun here. And it feels a lot like Calistoga where the original tank is. The wines are cool here. Diversity of grapes are cool here. The people are amazing here. And then the winery community here is really good. And the thing, we're from Napa Valley, and though that's like maybe like the sort of mecca of wine tourism in the US, these smaller communities, they work really well together to sort of raise this, raise the tide for all the ships in them. And so we just fell in love with this place. And so we're like, we should go to Paso. We should go to Paso. That was our one thing. That's our next stop. And when we when we first came down here, we're like, we got to get another old 1930s streamlined modern Art Deco garage, which is it's impossible to find. Like we spent years trying to find one. We're like, all right, fuck it. Let's next plan. We're gonna go downtown. Downtown's cool. So we're, our favorite bar, the Pine Street Saloon, is downtown. We'll go there. And we found this spot on 13th Street, which is across the street from Della's and the Hatch. There's some other great wineries just around the corner from us. And we got this spot, and we wanted to do different twists on this place than we did in Calistoga, but similar vibe, which is it's like vintage, retro, auto mechanic sort of in the front, and in the back, in Calistoga, we have like kind of a speakeasy. Here, it's more like a rock and roll lounge. We'll do that. And we got it open, and the community has been awesome here. I'll just
Yeah.
say that. The community has embraced us. They've been super cool to us. We had an industry party here last night. We had like oversold it. People were here, well past closing. They're being supportive. A lot of people we have a lot of industry members that joined our club. We have a lot of people never been here. So it's been super cool working here. And I'll tell you this cool thing. So we came into like this building that's just on the street, and next door to us is a salon, and there's a brunch place. So it's not like out in a vineyard, and it's not a freestanding building like a garage. But like we opened in April of 2024, and like 6 months later, an older person came in, a Paso person, and they're like, "Oh, I remember coming here with my grandparents to get tires." And we're like, "What?" And our manager was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, this used to be like an old garage." And we're like, "For real?" So
Well,
our manager at the time, Russell, he went to the historical society, and sure enough, we got all these historical photos that this place, which is an old building, was originally like a gas station and service station. So if you go on like our website, we have like this little documentary we made where we have all these old photos, and we're like, it was sort of meant to be to come here. Like we didn't know this place was an old garage, but it turns out it actually was a garage. So to answer your question, Heather, we came down here because Paso is cool, and we love it here, and we want to be a part of the community, and we feel really fortunate that it's been successful and the community has embraced us. It's only further sort of motivated us to be like, there's other places in California we could do cool shit too. So that's the Paso story.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like it's kismet. They just
Yeah, it
yeah,
is kismet. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We're like, oh, yeah, no, that makes us feel really good.
that's so
Yeah.
fucking cool. I love that. That's awesome. Oh my god. Just yeah, I think Paso is such a great place for Tank. It like the second that I found out that you guys were moving, opening up a tasting room in Paso, I was like, that makes so much sense. Like it makes more sense than any other place that you could have chosen because I feel like the community there is so innovative. It's full of people who are just willing to take risks and willing to try things and fuck shit up and like make mistakes and really and it's just great. Yeah, so I'm really stoked that you guys are there and that I will eventually get up to
You
and
will. Yes.
get to hang out a little bit more. Um, did you have any like kind of surprises or challenges with moving to this location?
Yeah. Well, I will say this. We're stupid people, as I told you earlier, but we're not stupid enough to know that like there's going to be things that we need to adapt to. And we're not going to know all those things immediately, and we're still learning. So there's been a lot of things that are different than what we're accustomed to in Napa Valley. And, we've been in Napa Valley and we've been in Napa Valley during like the heyday of Napa Valley. So a lot of things are,
Hmm.
I would quote unquote, easier. But, there's different things we've had to adapt to. So it's like, there are, our hours are different here. Our visitation trends are different here. The composition of our guests are different. Like they come from different parts of California or they come from different parts of the country when they're coming from out of state. They buy different things. Like we sell through, we may have the same wines generally, sometimes we have Paso or Calistoga exclusive wines, but we might have the same wine offerings at one time, but we go through way more of, bigger, bolder red wines here in Paso Robles than we do in Calistoga. So we're still learning about things that are different just from like a business perspective. And then we continue to learn about things that are important for community perspectives. Like we've done industry parties in Napa where they go like this. And we had this industry party last night, which is our first one. And they're like, this is how things are done here. And we're like, all right, we'll roll up the punches. So we're still learning. There's a lot of different things that we have done here. Again, we talked about like communities is really important here. And so we started doing like reciprocal partnerships with other wineries for certain months, and they've been gung ho here. So we partner up with cereal wines around the corner. It's like your members come here and taste free and get, discount off, and our members can go there. And we promote the shit out of each other, and it's super beneficial. And then we do it with another winery. We'll do it with like, Hope, or we'll do it with, we've done it with probably like, 15 different wineries here. And sometimes those are things we've not done in Napa Valley, but we're like, we should try this out in Napa. And so we try it out in Napa and that goes well. Now a lot of wineries are doing it in Napa. So
Yeah.
it's cool to be able to dabble in both because there's some things from, our Napa Valley experience we're able to bring down here. And then there's stuff that we learn in Paso Robles, we're bringing it up to bring up to Napa Valley. But we're always learning. We just learned about this thing this past weekend. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but it's called Elegant Evening.
No,
And
I
our,
haven't
our
heard of it.
manager here, Brandon, was telling us, he's like, yeah, this is Saturday, elegant evening, it got rained out. And we're like, pardon me? What? He's like,
Like,
you don't know about
what is that?
elegant evening? He's like, it's huge here. And everyone I talked to last night is like, yeah, dude, elegant evening's huge here. And the people get dressed up and there's like sometimes dancers and people in the storefronts windows and you stay open late. But I'm like, okay, I understand that. So next year we'll be able to approach that and we'll put our own sort of spin on it. So there's always like local and cultural things you learn along the way. But again, this place has been so cool and they've been so helpful. They're like, they've sort of taken us under a wing and like, this is how we do things here. We want you to be successful. That it's been great. This place is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, Paso's the best. I don't get up there nearly enough because it's a solid hour drive for me. Uh, and whenever I do get up there, it's because I'm working. And so I'm not really spending too much time up there socially and like playfully. Every time I do get the chance to do that, I just have the best time. So like last year, I did like a sort of like a company retreat with myself because I'm the company. And I went wine tasting at a couple of places that I have never been wine tasting at. And it was just so cool. The community up in Paso is so different from the community down here in Santa Barbara County. And yeah, it's just, it's really lively and spirited. It's such a great place to be.
Yeah,
I'm very glad that you're there.
me
It's so
too.
cool.
I love it here.
Well, we are going to get down to the wire. I do want to ask, I always like to finish up these conversations with a kind of a what would you recommend? Like if somebody were to take like one thing away from our conversation and implement it in their business, what would that be? Like what 5-minute advice would you give?
Make a wine with these or 70s porno movie on it. That'd be my biggest piece of advice. Probably go poorly for you. TTB might not sign off on it. My advice, and again, I'm an idiot, so just take this. Your mileage may vary. Is what we talked about earlier, which is if you're marketing is about standing out, and you got to do it in a way that's authentic to you, that tells a unique and compelling story. If you're a brand, you have to have a reason to exist. You have to have a unique voice. You have to be saying something interesting and unique, and you also have to be pushing things forwards and taking risks. Right? You can't just be a blueprint marketer, which is I saw somebody do this or somebody gave this to me. And you know this as somebody who does social media strategy, which is what worked 10 years ago used to be like, this is your Instagram strategy. You need to post every 2 days. Posting on Wednesdays works really well at 7 o'clock. Like that all goes out the window. But anyways, you have to be trying things. You have to be experimenting. You have to be taking risks. You have to be pushing forward because if you don't, you will go stagnant. You'll never be a leader. You'll never be an innovator. You'll just be a follower. And consumers generally don't go to those brands. And so if you are a winery and we're facing all these headwinds, you really now more than ever need to find a way to stand out and do things that are unique and different. And I'm not advocating everybody make every single wine a one off or follow Tank or make wines that swear have naked people on them. You got to find what's unique to you. And you have to sit down and say, what is our story we're going to tell? And then you have to do a great and compelling job doing it. If I had to sum that up, the TLDR version is like, just do like, quit fucking around and do some cool shit.
I love it. That's a great place to stop. Ed, thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation. I could talk to you for hours and hours. And I hope I get to hang out with you some more during DTC Symposium in January. Do you want to do anything that you want to plug or talk
Plug
about?
on that? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everyone in the wine industry, every day we open up, some news article about the demise of wine industry or another headwind. And it's more challenging than ever right now. And so we need to be as well informed and equipped and inspired as ever. And the single best place that I have ever experienced getting those benefits is at the Direct to Consumer Wine Symposium, which is the single biggest direct to consumer wine symposium in North America, perhaps the world. And it's where all the best minds in our industry are to talk about their experiences and talk about their ideas. It's about where all the best platforms and vendors and technologies and strategists are. It's a great place to network. It's a great place to learn. It is really rewarding conference to go to and it's very valuable. And so if you are in this space, there's a good chance you've already been, but if you haven't been in this space, I would encourage you to invest in going to it. It's I think it's January 20th through the 22nd of 2026. It's in Monterey, California, so it's going to be beautiful and it's the best way to learn about things that will help your brand push forward and stand out and do cool shit and meet good people that are in the industry that will help inspire you or maybe even hire you. So if you're watching this or listening to this and you're in the DTC wine world and you haven't been, you got to go. And if you haven't been for a couple years, it's so good now. It's if you went 5 years ago or before the pandemic, it was great, but it's so dialed in now. The team that's running it is dialed in. They have great ideas. They're pushing forward because they know we need this. So my plug is, please go look into this. There's discounted pricing if you are buying multiple passes. So if you have a good team, there's student passes with discounts, there's media discounts. Go look into it. And I promise it will, at the very least, it's wine people. There's going to be good parties and stuff. It's going to be fun. So I hope
Yeah.
to see everyone there.
Yeah, that's great. I'll put all that information in the show notes. Ed, thank you so much. This was the best. I will talk
Yeah.
to you soon.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.